And these are necessary skills. That segues into another part that I know that you work with pretty regularly, which has to do with cultural literacy and
Yes.
incorporating that into the classroom. You're dealing with lots of different kinds of culture and teaching and learning styles and that sort of thing. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I do use that term cultural literacy, but it's not in the William Bennett agenda of European culture, although European culture is also part of culture.
Sure.
It's actually my cultural literacy is, for example, with students at this time, in this moment in history, at this age, what I like to do is I like to make, as an English teacher, novel selections that have embedded within them lots of opportunities for conversation about the last 50 to 200 years of American history. And so what I try to do, for example, just to give you an example, in my 10th grade class, we recently finished reading Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut, which is a novel where he imagines a weapon of mass destruction. Mm-hmm. And he traces it all through the way it falls into the hands of, a crazy banana republic leader and ends up destroying the world. And so as part of that, my students had to pick up a lot of Vonnegut's cultural references. They're 14 and 15 and 16, and they don't know what the Manhattan Project is.
Right.
And they don't really know what the Cold War is or what the McCarthy era is. And they understand weapons of mass destruction only in that it's vaguely a threat and connected to Al-Qaeda. And so to actually have them find the reference in the novel, which Vonnegut throws out because at his time of publishing the novel in 1963, his readers all had that.
Yes.
But when he throws them out, to send them to say, okay, now go find out what the Manhattan Project was.
Right.
Go find out what mutually assured destruction meant. And so I break those references in the novel into parts, assign them to students, make them go look up the information and then present it to the class, mm-hmm. and then read back into the novel how it's connected and what Vonnegut meant by that. So in a way it gives them, they have the narrative of the story, which is kind of twisted and cool and they like it, and then they have a connection to actually our cultural history.
And do you also incorporate in some way, each student as they're going and investigating those particular pieces, they have a history that they're bringing. Their family situation, their ethnic background, for example, those kinds of things. Are those brought in those discussions as well somehow?
I would say that in this particular school, that many of the students seem to be coming from a similar cultural background. In other schools I've taught, there's been a larger difference because there have been a lot of immigrants from Mexico in particular, and then in a school I taught in last year, we had a large refugee population, so we had a lot of Vietnamese students, Indonesian students, and Bosnian students.
Yes.
So in that case, it was more relevant to bring in cultural differences that come from the families of the students.
Yes.
Here at KCA, the major differences are family culture,
yes.
and learning styles. Those are the bigger differences between the students. They seem to be on the same page ethnically and culturally, but what they come from is really different family styles.
Yes, that's right. So we've talked a little bit about the different kinds of literacies that you bring into the classroom. What do you think the benefits are of this expansion into the digital media, the cultural literacies, those sorts of things, versus strictly, as you talked about before, the linguistic part?
Well, I think the primary benefit of using multiple proficiencies and literacies in the classroom is that when you let that be a guide for your lesson planning, you are necessarily going to be connected to what's real. And so what will happen is that your lessons will be more authentic. And if your lessons are more authentic and they're more connected to the real lives of not only your students but yourself, the students will be more engaged. The other benefit is that teacher burnout is such an issue, and I've had, the privilege to work with many teachers who just, keep it alive and keep it real year in and year out. But I've also worked with teachers that are done and just keep going.
Right.
And using multiple literacies where you're connecting to the real lives of students and addressing, not only the advantages of modern life, but the deficits and the things we've lost in modern life.
Sure.
Just helps the teacher to continue to be passionate and the teacher to be refreshed. And that in turn also helps the students be engaged. And so that to me is the primary benefit.
So are there any obstacles or are there any negative pieces of bringing those in at all? You talked a little bit about some of the obstacles that you were overcoming with resources.
Right.
What about things like how much time it takes for you to plan? Is it more involved than if you were just teaching with other more traditional literacies?
I really don't think it's a bigger chunk of time to plan it. It's just that it definitely, if I was teaching in a high stakes standardized testing environment, it would not be possible. It would be it would just be a little add-on to the curriculum here and there. Because I don't currently teach in a high stakes testing environment, it's really not a time issue. Because I'm not teaching to the test and the rest of the class, it can more easily be, not just plussed on to the end, but it is, part and parcel of the whole.
It becomes piece. How you do school for them.
It's how I do school for them. But there is an obstacle to using multiple literacies for any teacher, and that is really, there's time. There's of course institutional support and resources. That's a big part. But really, I think the biggest obstacle is really the willingness, because
of the teacher
mm-hmm. is really the will to, and the letting go of the safety of the curriculum and being willing to risk. Yeah, I don't really know how to do this high-tech thing, but I'm going to go find out, and we're going to find out together.
Right.
Yeah.
I can certainly see how that obstacle is something that once overcome
mm-hmm.
could have huge benefit to mm-hmm. both the teacher and the students.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear about bringing, different ways of doing things in the classroom. There's a lot of fear about that. Will it work? Will the internet work?
Right. Will I fall on my face in front of the class?
Right.
Yes.
So backup plans. Always backup plans.
Well, I very much appreciate all your time. Is there any final thoughts that you have about literacy or multiple literacies that you want to leave with us?
Well, I would say that one thing we did not talk about is global literacy, global awareness, and global proficiency. In many ways, as educators of American children, that may be our actually most sacred responsibility, is to give our students an opportunity to experience the perspectives of others all around the world, so that Americans can, start to take greater places of leadership and compassion and awareness of other cultures all over the world. That's a really profound experience.
And something certainly, as we talk about the 21st century skills, this whole idea of understanding the connectedness of us with others around the globe is a key.
It's a really key and important, to our survival really as a species, to create that kind of perspective. But there's another aspect, I would say, to multiple literacies and the 21st century skills, and that is our students are gradually but consistently having a shift in their cognitive abilities. And so we also have an obligation to teach cognitive skills to help them to be able to manage the flow of information and the pace of modern life.
It's because everything is so quick. And
everything is so quick, and the filters of how do I spend my time, especially in an affluent culture as we have in the United States primarily. There's so many choices that are not good for the mind, and we have to help our students to actually build cognitive tools for thinking, analyzing, and sustaining attention.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.